change management in D365 implementations, and how AI is revolutionizing D365. Those are just two of the topics we'll cover here in episode number 6 of the Journey to D365 podcast.
Welcome to Journey to D365, the podcast that covers everything related to Microsoft Dynamics 365 implementations. This podcast is not affiliated with Microsoft and covers the realistic truth behind D365 finance and operations and Business Central ERP implementation success. Whether you're new to the world of Microsoft or not, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
Hello, welcome to episode number 6 of the Journey to D365 podcast. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm your host here today. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and we're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their D365 implementations as well as their non-Microsoft digital transformations. And joining me, as always, is our co-host, Darian Fiakuski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Got a great show lined up for you today. You can find any of the past episodes you might have missed of the show. Go to journey2d365.com. You can also see and keep up with upcoming episodes and subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you prefer by going to journey2d365.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, and we're an independent consulting firm, as I mentioned, that helps clients with D365 and non-D365 implementations. You can learn more about us by going to thirdstage-consulting.com. We've got a great show for you today. We've got a lot we're going to cover. We're going to start off by getting into a question we received on social media. We're also going to talk about how AI is revolutionizing D365. And then later in the show, we'll have our guest, or our next guest, Jakob Bent Smed, who is going to be with us talking about change management in D365 implementation. So we'll cover the human side of change as well as the emerging tech side of change with AI. So we'll cover the whole spectrum here in today's episode. But before we jump into some of those topics, Darian, what's the social media question we want to highlight and address here today?
Yeah, so we have this comment from social media about change management, and I want to get your take on it. Eric, what do you think, if you agree with it or not? It says, in most cases, change management has become an overused term and often loses its effectiveness because it isn't done correctly. Leading people through change is both an art and a science. Companies often bring in third-party change management consultants as a last resort, expecting them to implement a framework and solve everything. In reality, the people side, quote unquote, of change requires a more intimate and internal effort. Executive leadership must play a key role as they have the influence and understanding needed to drive deep, meaningful change. Outsourcing this responsibility can dilute its impact. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have mixed feelings about it. First of all, I agree that change management is difficult. I think I've seen change management be in some ways easier for D365 projects, but in other ways harder. It's easier in that, Microsoft shops, companies that are already using Microsoft products tend to adapt a little bit easier to the look and feel and the functionality of Microsoft D365. But on the other hand, the things that undermine that benefit or that net gain in adoption and change management is going to be the fact that the product itself is so flexible. And so it sort of gives you an excuse to resist change. If you're an employee or a team member on the project, it's really easy to say, well, we don't really have to change. We could just change Microsoft to change D365 to fit what we want. And in many cases, that leads you back to the way you've always done things. And so it sort of hinders your progress in terms of potentially improving your business and becoming more efficient, more effective and whatnot. The part about outsourcing change, though, I think it's a slippery slope or it's a balancing act. You need to, leverage people that have managed complex changes before, people that are objective, that aren't caught up in the politics and the dynamics of highly tenured employees that have been doing things a certain way for so long. Sometimes having an outsider that can help identify those patches or those points of resistance and also bring a structured framework to help navigate change, that can be pretty powerful. And in fact, it's one of the big service offerings we provide to our clients on D365 implementations as well as non-Microsoft implementations as well. We do a ton of change management for our clients. But having said that, our clients can't rely too much on us. They can't have completely outsourced change to us. It's more of a collaborative thing where we provide the structure, the framework, the thought leadership, the approach. We can create a lot of the content and training materials, communication materials, change impact materials, all that stuff. But you need people internally within the organization that are going to be the faces of change and the ones that are actually going to lead the change. So we can't lead it for you, because even if we wanted to, even though we'd probably be good at it in theory, we don't have the credibility internally because we're not part of your organization. Neither is any other third party. So you do have to have both, really. You have to have that outside expertise, framework, proven tool set, all that good stuff. But also you need to marry that with the internal expertise and credibility that comes from the people that are going to own the change longer term.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we're going to talk about it a lot with Jakob later. I think he'll give a lot of good insights into change management with D365. But for now, I'm going to hold off on that and switch gears to our newsworthy article of the day, which includes artificial intelligence and how it is revolutionizing Microsoft D365. So according to this article, AI is revolutionizing Microsoft D365 by enhancing decision-making, streamlining processes, and improving customer experiences. The key AI features include predictive analytics, intelligent automation, and personalized experiences. The benefits in Dynamics 365 include sales optimization, enhanced customer service, and optimized supply chains. So with this, AI in Dynamics 365 is transforming business operations as the technology evolves, and even more innovative features are on the way, is what they say.
Right.
Which I feel like will be really exciting to see how Microsoft, develops their AI, but there's already a lot of great AI features, like they said, in it. With this, Eric, what are some of the common challenges you see businesses face when they're integrating AI into Dynamics 365, and how can they overcome that?
Well, I think first of all, a lot of organizations and their project teams struggle with where to use AI because there's so many different options. You just mentioned several ways that AI can be enabling, more effective operations and more efficiency. And it could be overwhelming when you think about boiling the ocean and trying to implement all these different AI capabilities across your entire enterprise. And I think the good thing with AI is you don't need, you can experiment a lot more with AI than you can necessarily with a more structured ERP system. So when you think about D365 at its core, you have to spend more time thinking about your end-to-end processes. You have to set up your chart of accounts. You've got to set up your master data. You've got to do all this stuff before you can really get value out of D365. But the cool thing about AI and Copilot and some of these other tools that are out there is that you can experiment with those without necessarily considering your end-to-end processes. You could just pick off one part of your business and figure out a way that you could use AI to do things more effectively. And you're sort of like you're re-engineering and rolling out new technology more at the grassroots level, bottoms up, versus ERP, which is typically more, top down. It's sort of like enterprise wide, we're deploying it. So, I would say the best way to navigate this and the way we've seen customers succeed is to say, let's just pick out some high value areas we can experiment and do some innovation. And then once we figure out where it's going to work in that specific use case, then we can start to scale it and roll it out across the broader department or work group or the entire enterprise, depending on what the function is.
For sure. And now that you mentioned that, how scalable do you think that the AI features in Dynamics 365 for businesses of different, like how scalable is it for different size businesses and industries?
I think it's very scalable and accessible for all size companies. So if you're a small or mid-sized company, you're at a pretty significant advantage here, because now all of a sudden you've got these capabilities that you used to have to be a bigger company to have the resources to be able to invest in this stuff. Whereas now, an end consumer can, pay $20 a month to get premium access to ChatGPT and use that AI tool set, generative AI, and all other sorts of purposes. Same with Copilot. I mean, Copilot's very accessible, and you don't have to be a big company to take advantage of it, and you don't have to be a big company to take advantage of AI in general. Yet the benefits can be potentially huge in terms of, and also limitless. I mean, the opportunities to use AI throughout an organization is limitless, which can be overwhelming, back to the previous point.
Right, exactly. And I think one thing that I know we've talked about a lot on this podcast is how customizable D365 is. So with that, can businesses customize the AI features in Dynamics 365 to better fit their specific needs or industry requirements?
I suppose you could use AI to customize the AI in D365 because I know a lot of implementations are focused on how you can use AI to enable a better implementation, whether it's customizing the software, configuring the software. If you're talking about data migration, building out some master data, all that kind of stuff, you can use generative AI to do a lot of that work for you and some of the heavy lifting. So yeah, I think inherently you've got a lot of flexibility there in how you use AI within D365.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's super interesting. And I'm excited to see how different companies are using Microsoft Dynamics 365 AI within their companies. If stuff ever comes out about that, I think that'll be a really interesting insight to look into. But to circle back to what we were talking about in the beginning and change management, I'm really excited for this conversation with Jakob.
Yeah, great conversation. We'll totally shift gears away from AI and the emerging buzz around that. We're going to talk about change management, something that's been important for decades now, and organizations still haven't quite figured out how to manage change effectively. So we're hoping to change that here today by bringing Jakob Bent Smed on the show. He's going to help us unpack this concept of how to manage change and how to implement organizational change management within D365 implementations. So you'll want to stick around and check this out, especially if you're going through a D365 implementation. You'll want to make sure you listen in on this conversation to learn how to enable change management within your D365 implementation. So we're going to bring Jakob on the show in here in just a moment, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more of the Journey to D365 podcast.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you'll want to download the Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how you can take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to episode number 6 of the Journey to D365 podcast. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm here at Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes of this show and past episodes by going to journey2d365.com. Be sure to check out that website. You can subscribe to the podcast, listen, watch wherever you want, whatever platform you prefer. Again, that's journey2d365.com. And we're going to bring on our next guest. I'm excited for this next guest. He's someone I've actually known for several years in the industry. We've sort of crossed paths, and he's going to be joining us here from Europe. It's Jakob Bent Smed, who is a change management practitioner and expert within the D365 space. and we want to have him on the show to talk about how to manage change in D365 implementations. So Jakob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric, for the invitation. I'm pleased to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on here. And we've known each other in the industry for quite some time now, so it's great to finally get together and have this podcast interview to share some of your experiences in the D365 world. But before we jump into some of the questions I have for you, Jakob, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're up to these days.
Yes, I've been in the ERP space the last 25 years, and I've been independent the last 15 years as an independent advisor, working both on the client side and the partner side. I usually tell my clients and my partners that what I'm doing is that I make sure that the client feel comfortable and competent in terms of implementing, but also, of course, the whole selection process, which takes place up front. I do that with partnerships. I'm based currently in Athens in Greece. So besides my work, I'm also doing some volunteer work where we help youngsters, mostly young people who live in the street of Athens.
Oh, very cool. So what kind of help are you delivering to those children in Athens?
Yeah, I help them with practical things like personal development coaching. So trying to get them back into education, trying to find them a job. But I also do like practical things like we're a group of people where we go and actually collect medicine for them and make sure that they take the medicine, get the prescriptions. We try to do the best to support these youngsters who, for various reasons, have ended up in the street.
Right. That's very cool. So you're not just a D365 consultant. You also have other interests as well and other philanthropic.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's a better way for me to give back to society and get a different focus sometimes. So it gives a deeper meaning to life sometimes. So I'm happy to do that.
Puts things into perspective, I imagine. Now, part of what you're doing in the D365 world involves some methodology development, and that's something you and I have talked about in the past. Can you tell me just a little bit about some of the methodology development work that you're currently involved with?
Yeah, so besides the Microsoft, you can say methodologies that Microsoft have been following or using and emphasizing through the partner channels throughout the years, Sure Step, Success by Design, etc. I have taken some of those methodologies and strengthened them, especially around the organizational change management. Currently, I have been doing methodology enhancement around project reviews, program reviews. So when you have a 365 implementation, BC, finance operation, which is in trouble, and you want like a 360 review where it's hurting in terms of on the governance, on the solution architecture, test management, we can give the client that kind of perspective. So that's what I've been doing the last month for a partner called Next 365.
Okay, great.
And besides that, I'm involved heavily into projects where I try my best to give independent advice in terms of clients who've already selected 365 or are ready to embark on a journey with 365.
Great. Yeah, so you've seen a pretty broad view of the market, and I imagine developing the methodologies too has been a good learning experience to sort of apply some of the knowledge from past.
It's been an excellent learning experience, and I usually say that I have during my 25 years within this space seen my fair share of good to some of the worst implementations, or you could say that implementation with us for various reasons suffered, and that experience, of course, I try to bring forward to my clients.
Great. So one of the things you and I have talked about too, as it relates to just overall approach and methodology, is the importance of getting ready for an implementation. Before I ask you what some of the important elements are to preparation and sort of the pre-implementation work, why is that phase of the project so important for D365 implementations?
Well, I would say it's really especially important about for 365, and we'll come back to that maybe in some of the questions later around an open ecosystem, but the whole preparation phase around 365, preparing your client is absolutely key. And that's one of my experiences, that it often goes back to the root cause when things try or sometimes go wrong in these implementations, is that the whole preparation phase, important elements have either been skipped or not completed to the degree that you want.
Right. And I think one thing you mentioned that is important is you mentioned the open ecosystem, and we'll get to this a little bit later too, is just all the different Microsoft tools that also fit within a D365 implementation. And a lot of times organizations, it seems like they can get lost or drown in all the options and different paths that they could go down. So having that preparation up front seems like it would give you a lot better direction and just a clarity of vision on how you're going to deploy these various different applications.
Yeah, and if you follow Microsoft's methodology and way of thinking, the whole envision or the strategy workshops that you do as early as possible, you do them even before you actually have a project, or those are really, really critical not to skip those, because that's really, really where you do the high level blueprint, the first high level blueprint of, I usually call it the Northern Star of what is it you want to, what's your ambition here? That's one thing. That's the solution blueprint. The other is actually the organizational envision, and say, okay, what are the capabilities within the organization? One thing is that you want to implement, but what are the capabilities within the organization? Do we have competing projects? Do we have the right staff, etc.? Those things are really, really important to get those addressed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. So what are the major components of pre-implementation or implementation readiness? Like, what are some of the major work streams? You've alluded to it a little bit here so far, but if we were just to unpack or sort of summarize the different pieces that you should really focus on in pre-implementation, what were some examples of that?
That would be to prepare your organization as early as possible. Take the business decisions that you want to accomplish. Take those, or try to prepare your organization for those as early as possible. Start preparing your organization as early as possible for, you could say, the journey, the project journey, but also what's going to happen on the other side. What's going to happen when we're live with the system? The whole operation phase is really, really critical here. Especially when you go from, you can say, if you're in an organization which is on-prem today, you want to, they're moving into the cloud. That is a major journey for these organizations. So not only to look for the journey itself, but actually also look for the when you're live with the system, because that is a phase which is underestimated in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like, in our client experience, a lot of times clients and project teams are so excited once they've decided and gotten the commitment that we're going to go deploy D365, and they're going to finally get off their old legacy systems and have these new technologies. There's so much excitement and momentum behind the project, which is great. You want to preserve that, but you also want to make sure that that excitement doesn't lead you just to jump in and start building technology without having a clear vision of what it is.
Exactly. And that brings me back to my northern star. What is your vision here? What are the benefits that you want to realize? So before you start to talk about the technology and choose anything about the product, start with the business side. You need to, and that's why I come back to that envision workshop, where you bring business, IT, external people like myself, like yourself, together and say, okay, this is the vision on the solution, high level solution blueprint, and this is the envision of the organization. You need to do those two kind of things very early.
Yeah,
that's why my lesson learned. And you have clients today who skip that part. They jump right into the selection and they choose the product. And for them, it becomes extremely expensive to refit or change that later. So what I go out and say to my clients and to my partners, that preparation is absolutely key here. You want to go slow in the beginning to be able to speed up later.
Right. Yeah, that's a great line. I use a variation or different variations of that same statement, which is you may feel like you're slowing down right now by doing some of this planning and the pre-implementation, but you're actually going to speed things up exponentially more by taking that time up front to do that pre-planning. Otherwise, you end up spinning your wheels and you end up deploying technologies that don't fit that Northern Star, as you mentioned. You spend too much time and money deploying because you're spending time and money making decisions when you could have had those decisions made before the reseller or the integrator ever showed up to help you start implementing the technology. So I think those are really good points.
Yeah, exactly. And also think about what you want to change. But so with upgrading or going to a new platform, you really have a golden opportunity to change. Get rid of obsolete process that you don't want to carry forward because you want to have a more streamlined operation. That's one thing. Your data model is another thing. So it's really important to do that preparation. If you want to, let's say, because my background is finance, so if you want to change your steering model, if you want to change your chart of account, if you want to change your dimensions, you usually do that when you change the system. We all know that because it's extremely difficult to do that during running an application that you already is using. Clients usually do this when they have the ability to do that. That takes time. That takes a preparation. You don't just build a new chart of account, new dimension structure overnight, but you could do that in your preparation phase.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of preparation or thoughts that you should put into this, both in terms of what page you have today, what you want to solve, but also how the future setup is going to be.
Yeah, and especially if you're trying to move your organization to a reorganization of sorts, where you're trying to use this implementation as an opportunity, for example, to create common business processes. Let's just say you're a company that went out and you acquired 5 other companies and you've got 5 different ways of operating. Before you deploy D365, that's a great opportunity to say, okay, we've got 5 different sets of business processes that look perhaps wildly different. So how do we want to potentially standardize those processes to create a common operating model, a common business processes? Let's figure that out now before all the really expensive technical consultants are sitting there waiting for us to decide, and they're billing by the hour while we're still trying to decide what we want our processes to be. If we have that blueprint laid out up front and we have a clear vision of this is what our common business process should look like in the future, not 5 different processes, but one, you can do all that up front and save a lot of time and money and add a lot more direction to the project during that implementation phase.
So you really also need to, not only look at to be, as you're saying here, but you need to understand what is your current as is process. So I also recommend to document those down to maybe level 3, level 4, especially on your core processes. So okay, these are the ones, this is the core business, and you can carry those forward into the other project phases. So all these things are really, really things that you can prepare or start preparing the organization for. And then back to what I started to say in the beginning, the operation phase is you could already start to recruit people as early as possible when you have set, of course, the application landscape and lock down those applications. Because Microsoft Dynamics is so flexible in terms of both solutions and partners, you in this preparation phase, you might have to consider how much knowledge do we need to have inside. You need to have, from my understanding or my more recommendation, end-to-end knowledge about the full application landscape. Put yourself in the front seat here and and really understand how the Microsoft ecosystem works. So having that insight is really important. That knowledge inside the organization.
I'm here with Jakob Bent Smed talking about change management within D365 implementations. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more of the Journey to D365 podcast. I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown: Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
Welcome back to the Journey to D365 podcast, episode number 6. This is the podcast that covers everything related to D365 implementations, and we're here with Jakob Bent Smed talking about change management within D365 implementations. You mentioned the flexibility of the product. I want to dig on that a little bit, or dig into that a little bit. Compared to other ERP systems in the marketplace, D365, I would say, is a lot more flexible than, say, S4HANA or Oracle Fusion or NetSuite or Workday. Some of these other leading ERP systems are not as flexible. And so in those examples, like say Workday or NetSuite, for example, you're going to have, you have less decisions to make because the software is a little bit more rigid. So the software can't be changed as easily. So you don't have to make as many decisions, for better or for worse. With D365, it is such a flexible product in terms of the functionality, the open architecture, the number of different ISVs, third-party implementers that you could choose from. There's just a lot more options and a lot more decisions to make. So how does that flexibility, well, first of all, the number of decisions you have to make is exponentially greater in D365 implementations compared to other ERP implementations, which makes that pre-implementation planning phase even more important. But beyond that, if we also look at from a change management perspective, how does the flexibility of D365, how does that affect change management efforts during an implementation?
Yeah, what I've seen is that with flexibility, of course, comes opportunities. So that's one side. And with opportunities, it just stresses that organizational change management just becomes even more important from my point of view. That's what I've seen. Because you have to be very, very good at preparing the organization, because it's an open ecosystem where it's relatively easy these days for clients to implement themselves also new features. So, and with the pace that Microsoft is also introducing new functionality, that you need to prepare the organization for these changes. So that means having an effective change structure, having an effective communication structure, being updated on Microsoft's release policies, and determining whether you want to implement those features. So, you can say that is the bonus of signing up to this, but it just puts extra pressure back to the organization to be able to cope with a constant. I don't see this as, I see this as positive, but the constant flow of features which you might use, you might not use them.
Right.
And that goes both for Business Central. It goes especially also for finance operations product suites.
Yeah. Now, what about with that flexibility of the product, do you ever see clients that are resistant to changing their current state simply because they can change the software, and in some cases it might be easier for them just to change D365 to do what they have always done versus perhaps using something that's a little bit more mature or advanced, or some capability in the system that maybe could help them improve their business, but it's going to entail a change for them?
It's a good question. You could say with that flexibility and the easy adoption of third-party software, it can be a challenge sometimes to utilize. I would say use that word. Utilize the platform, either Business Central or Finance Operation. Utilize what has been developed within standard before you go out to the ecosystem and try to implement that. So actually, I have clients that I work with where we say, okay, what does standard do? There is a reason why Microsoft has developed this functionality. Shouldn't we try to use this to the best capability? You can say, use this functionality before we go out into the ecosystem, or even before we start to suggest any modification.
Yeah.
So that's back to that when you bought the system, when you bought the license structure, bought into the ecosystem, that you use that system or systems, because let's also say that there are also clients who have both, they go across the ecosystem, but you use that platform, the standard platform, as much as possible. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the other things that come along with that flexibility are the flexible ecosystem that we talked about, the different solutions and partners and ISVs, which for those that don't know, ISVs are essentially third parties that have built some sort of unique functionality within the D365 platform. So it could be for a specific industry or a specific function. So that's something that's fairly unique to D365, is you have the base product that's built by Microsoft, but then you've got these third parties that have created variations of D365 to fit different scenarios. So with that, that's a pretty fragmented space, I'd say, when I compare the Microsoft space to some of the other ecosystems with other software vendors. It's a lot more fragmented. There's a lot more options in the Microsoft space. So what are some tips to navigate that whole, complexity of the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, you're absolutely right here. That is one of the things with the Microsoft. You have like if you're an industry, you work within, let's say, the property sector. You have very strong verticals for property management. For that part, you have within the food industry, you have very strong verticals. Just to mention a few of them, and of course they have built upon the strength of Microsoft, and they have develop their own verticals. So if you operate within these industries, you might want to look at, because then you would not go with vanilla, right? You would go with one of these verticals, or that would be an assumption. So you might want to look in that way. But you also have to remember with the you might end up with a situation where you end up with multiple vendors across your enterprise architecture, which is again, not stressing the organization, but something you have to be aware of. Who has the responsibility of the solution, of the end-to-end solution? I've seen implementation where one vendor had the responsibility for finance, another one had the responsibility for other parts of the system, but you didn't have any end-to-end responsible, which of course caused a problem for the client.
So the speed of the platform is changing quite a bit, D365 as a core platform, but then you also have these other Microsoft platforms like Azure and Power Apps, third-party ISV solutions, things like that. So you have not just D365 that's constantly changing, that you've got to sort of keep up with those changes, both during an implementation and post-implementation too. But then you've got Azure, Power Apps, these third-party ISVs that are also changing. How should customers think about navigating that piece of it?
I would say it be updated on it. Know the strengths and the weaknesses of the different applications, but have that end-to-end perspective. As I said earlier, it is an ecosystem with frequent updates. So you need you need to have, at least for the bigger clients, you need to have those competencies within the organization to challenge the partner.
Yeah. And then, also, making sure that the staff, internally and your external partners too, you want to make sure they've got the right knowledge and up to date knowledge of the evolution of the different products that are being deployed as well.
Yeah, exactly. But, and then maybe brings me back. That maybe bring me back to one of the questions that you asked earlier about the whole preparation phase. And something which is really important is that when you go from current state to future state, that you, as early as possible, also find your change agents within the organization. Those people who know the processes, who know the data model, and which can carry the organization from current state to future state. Those people, I made a LinkedIn post about it. I sometimes refer to them as the secret smart people within the organization, but you see them all over the organizations. These are the people who really, they've been there for a long time, years. They know the data model, they know the process. They may be even part of the operation, the daily operation. That you find those people and you embrace those people. Those are really, really, that's really, I would say, a really important element in transforming from current state to future state in terms of these. And that you can say that doesn't only go for 365. That could have been with SAP or other implementations, but that you find those people and embrace those.
I'm here with Jakob Bent Smed talking about change management within D365 implementations. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more of the Journey to D365 podcast.
I'm excited to share our newly released 2024 Digital Enterprise Operations Report. This free download is available on the Third Stage website at thirdstage-consulting.com. This report is truly packed full of technology-independent and agnostic insights for your project to ensure that you're strategically optimized for success. Download your copy today with the QR code in front of me or visit our website for more details.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting and your host of Transformation Ground Control. I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or a free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Welcome back to the Journey to D365 podcast, episode number 6. This is the podcast that covers everything related to D365 implementations, and we're here with Jakob Bent Smed talking about change management within D365 implementations. What other change management tips do you have, in addition to finding those change agents and some of the things we've talked about so far? What other change management advice do you have for project teams that are going through D365 implementations?
No, I would say that you know the skills of the people that you know what are the weaknesses, where do we potentially could see resistance within the business, but it also goes within the IT. If you have people who fear going from server-based environment towards cloud environment,
right.
So the whole resistance that you identify those people, that you embrace them, is really, really important. I worked recently with a client who started to implement 365 several times. And one of the issues that this client was struggling with that was resistant management. So you really need to find these people and get them convinced that, that the future will be, that they're also going to be part of the future.
Yeah.
I do different methodologies. I use different methodologies. I'm not religious in the sense of I use, of course, I've taken some of the industry standard methodologies, but I also strengthen them during the years based on my experience. So I try to, like I said, tell any good consultant or advisor, try to take what is good in the market, but also always take your experience with you.
Sure. So it's not just taking the sure step methodology at face value and saying that's all we need to do. There's usually other things that need to happen even outside the sure step.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have to show that flexibility. You also have to show that flexibility where the client is coming from. If the client has a special wish for more specific methodology, you have to be able to tailor that, I would say, to the client's needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I've talked in the past about third-party solution reviews, and those seem to be seldomly used unless the client requires it. But it could mitigate some of the issues that service providers are facing with the speed of new technology and features that are being provided. Tell us about that. How should customers of Microsoft D365 be thinking about third-party solution reviews?
No, third-party solution reviews, I think are beneficial for various reasons, and should be used. They should be used more than is the case, because you can say that the quicker you do a review of a troubled project program, the better it is, everything equal, right? So I'm a big believer in those kind of reviews. I'm a big believer in engaging with independent consultants, advisors as early as possible, and to embrace them, to bring them in as independent, and they can focus on either giving advice to the business, the client, but of course they can also help be independent when you have to conduct such a review.
Right. So speaking of independence, you and I are both independent, even though we both know D365 really well, and you've done 20 plus years of Microsoft Dynamics work. Why is it so important for organizations to bring in an independent third party like your firm or mine?
It's important for various reasons, but the most important is that we can come in and take this top-down level of understanding. So we can come in. We're not trying to force a specific solution or a specific technology on the client, and I think that's something we can help with. Furthermore, we can of course help with translating or bridge the implementation partner to the client. So I believe that this way we can accelerate the implementation of 365 or other applications simply by making the client more comfortable, simply by making the client more competent. I use that competent because let's face it, most of the clients, they're not implementing new ERP systems every day as we're doing. So they do it maybe a couple of times in their lifetime. So by, exposing our expertise to them and telling them which decisions or the consequences of they don't make those decisions, we can actually accelerate the implementation of these applications.
Yeah, absolutely. And hold the software vendor accountable or the implementer accountable, just to make sure that someone is knowledgeable in managing those parties to make sure things stay on track and that you're meeting your business objectives.
Exactly. These are multi-million often implementation. So you could say, why don't we do it as you have with the construction industry? In the construction industry, you'll have someone who is independent, who's overseeing the construction of buildings. Why is that not more used in both ERP implementations, but also bigger transformation projects?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So for organizations that are just about to start their Dynamics 365 journey, or perhaps they're early in the process, what sort of summary closing advice would you have for those companies?
I would say prepare yourself as early as possible. Know the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem. Don't choose the product. Don't do the product selection too fast. Do your envision workshop with your partners and independent advisors. Do that, as early as possible, and dedicate the resources. Start preparing the organization for all the nice things which are going to happen when the project is actually being implemented, the software has been implemented. Start to do that as early as possible. Think about your staffing. Which resource are you going to put into the project? I usually say to my clients, I need the best of the best within the organization. You want to set this up for success. You don't want to re-implement or reallocate resources later. You want to set the A team, the best resources, but that also comes with a cost. The cost could be that you need to backfill some of these. Are you willing to do that?
Right.
So that's some of the questions that you as an organization can start asking yourself.
Yeah. And, I guess I would just maybe add even more to what you're saying there, that everything you just described and a lot of what we've been talking about throughout this conversation around preparation and planning, I would argue that's the most important part of the entire project, because if you get that part right, the other stuff isn't easy, but it becomes a lot easier if you do a good job in the pre-implementation and the planning phase.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good. Well, good. So what are some best ways that people can get in touch with you or connect with you, Jakob?
Best way to connect with me, for follow-up is through my LinkedIn. Shoot me a message. I'll be happy to reply and get back to you as quickly as possible.
All right. Thank you, Jakob. Great conversation. In fact, there's a few threads we want to pull on there and themes we want to circle back to and build on here in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more of the Journey to D365 podcast. Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Third Stage Consulting, and I want to invite you to join our annual tech agnostic conference called Digital Stratosphere. Digital Stratosphere is a conference that features some of the industry's brightest minds, greatest thinkers, and it's a great opportunity to network with peers, other industry people, other CIOs, other project team members that are going through digital transformations or ERP implementations. We've got a great lineup of speakers this year. It's a 3-day event, a lot of great entertainment, networking opportunities. I'll be there as one of the keynote speakers, along with some of my favorite speakers in the industry as well, both within Third Stage Consulting, but also outside the company as well. So I encourage you to check it out and learn more. You can go to stratosphere2024.com to learn more about the event. You can see the agenda, the way it's shaping up, and you can see some of the past testimonials of people that have attended. And the event is October 2nd through the 4th, 2024. It's going to be based in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver, beautiful downtown Denver in the fall, which is a great time to visit Denver if you haven't been. Again, stratosphere2024.com. Check out the agenda. Check out our early bird pricing for passes. And the other beautiful things, if you can't be here in person in Denver, which we hope you can, but if you can't, you can also join remotely as well. We have virtual passes available as well, so you're able to join from wherever in the world you might want to join from. So stratosphere2024.com, check it out, and I hope to see you there.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Welcome back to episode number 6 of the Journey to D365 podcast. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Fiakuski. You can find new episodes and past episodes of the show at journeytod365.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their D365 implementations, as well as their non-Microsoft digital transformations as well. So, Darian, we just had Jakob on the show. We talked about change management quite a bit. We had a great conversation there. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, the change management piece of every implementation, no matter what ERP solution that you're implementing, is obviously one of the most important parts of it. But I think it was really nice to hear it in a specific way also for D365 and kind of getting nailed down on what change management looks like for this particular ERP system and what companies need to be prepared for. I also think another thing, Jakob talked about a lot was trying to focus on using the standard functionalities of the ERP system versus the custom modifications, and finding, the internal change agents who understand the existing processes and data models to facilitate this transition between a lot of customization and into standardization. But I want to kind of play the opposite side of this. I want to know, is there any specific scenarios where customization is particularly advantageous to any companies versus standardized functions?
Yes, that's a great question. And it's easy for us as consultants to say what Jakob said, and what many of us will often say is just use the software the way it was built. Don't change it. But it's not that easy. I mean, for a lot of your business, it can and should be that easy. But there are going to be parts of your business where it's not that easy because you have some sort of unique competitive advantage. Now, there are, of course, going to be some parts of your business or some people within your business that are going to resist the change and say that it won't work, when in reality it probably would work. It's just going to look different. It might be a little painful. It might be a bit of an adjustment. So set that aside for a second, because that does happen as well. So you have like 3 buckets here. You've got the bucket of processes that you should just be able to use the software as it's built. And that might be, let's call it 60 or 70% of your implementation is going to be just use the software as it's built. And then you might have like 20% or so where it's, resistance to change, basically people that just don't want to change and they don't like the way Microsoft works or whatever. And the reality is it could work. And even if it's not perfect, it's going to be fine. It's not a critical business function. It's not something that makes you different or gives you competitive advantage. So, that's more of a change management issue. And that's where you invest in change management. But then there's that third bucket, which is, no, actually, this is our competitive advantage. This is what allows us to deliver great service or a great product to our customers. This is something that we have that our competitors don't have. Microsoft D365 also doesn't have it, which is unfortunate, but now we've got to figure out how we're going to address that. That's really the key. This third bucket, I think, is the hardest one, because there's a temptation to say, well, let's just force standard functionality. You've got your consultants telling you, just use standard functionality. But you as a business leader might say, that's not good enough. That's not going to give us what we need to be competitive in the market. So that's where you have to decide. Maybe you do customization. You might also look at a third-party bolt-on system, a third-party app that you integrate with D365, or you might find a third-party developer, a third-party app that's built on the D365 platform, which is even better. If you can find that and within the ecosystem of Microsoft, that might be a good option as well. But customization isn't a bad thing. I mean, it in moderation, it's just like anything. It's sort of like sugar or alcohol or whatever. If you do it in moderation, it's probably okay. But when you start overdoing it, it becomes a slippery slope, and that's where you run into trouble. And I think that's why it's not such a black and white answer. You just have to be really disciplined about how you customize and make sure there's business value associated with it. For
sure. And so if, let's say, companies choose to do a little bit of customization and the rest is standard, how does that affect them for future proofing, for any updates or technology changes that they may want in the future?
If they customize, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the risk. That's why people are so allergic to customization, and rightfully so, is because now when you start talking about changes to the software that happen as a result of, not the upgrades, but just the constant changes that D365 goes through, you don't want that customization to break, when you have those changes to the software. So that is a risk that you've got to navigate, but that alone oftentimes isn't enough to say don't do it. You might still have to do it. And that's why, if you can find a third party off the shelf system that does what you need, even if it's not D365, it ends up being a bolt-on or an integration point, that in many ways from a technology perspective is ideal because now you don't run the risk that you talk about. But if that's not available, a last resort might be, we're going to customize, and it's probably going to suck, and we might have to change the customization or update the customization when future changes happen with the software. But that's something that's got to be managed in the pros and cons of the looking at what the off-the-shelf software can do versus not.
For sure. So it's almost comes down to making that pros and cons list for what each company really needs and what's most important to them, and then kind of making decisions from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Super interesting. I feel like Jakob made a lot of really great points today, especially in the change management for D365 area. And then along with all the other things that you guys chatted about too. I thought the conversation overall was super helpful.
Yeah, great conversation. Enjoyed having him on the show, and good to get his international perspective as well. Having he's on a different continent than us, so that's a nice viewpoint as well. So great conversation there, and appreciate having him on the show. I appreciate your help today, Darian, and I appreciate the audience questions and involvement here today. You can catch past episodes if you may have missed any of the past 5 episodes that we've done so far. You can see those still and listen to them still by going to journey2d365.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, an independent consulting firm that we work for that focuses on digital transformations, including D365 implementation. So if you need help with your D365 implementation, feel free to reach out, contact me. You can reach me via the contact information in the show notes below. And other than that, we'll plan on seeing you next week on another episode of the Journey to D365 podcast. And you'll want to check this one out because next week we'll have a guest on to talk about how to be successful with D365 and Business Central. So we're going to talk about that topic next week in episode 7. So be sure to stick around for that. And in the meantime, hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the Journey to D365 podcast.